Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best young running backs in the NFL. After being one of the highest drafted running backs over the last 5 years, a Pro Bowler in his rookie year, and having every intangible you would want at the running back position, Jahmyr Gibbs is considered to be one of the NFL's top young talents. But I'm going to take that narrative a little bit farther. And I'm going to push it forward to 2024 and say that in 2024, Jahmyr Gibbs will not just be one of the best young running backs in the NFL, he will be a top 2 running back in the entirety of the league. I think with his intangibles and with what he is able to do on this Detroit Lions offense, we will be looking at Jahmyr Gibbs as at worst a top 3 running back in 2024. And I think that the gap between him and Christian McCaffrey is not nearly as wide as the gap between him and number 3. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted from the University of Alabama in 2023. He was a first overall selection. He was a first round selection as the 12th overall pick in that class. At the time, it was considered a massive reach by the Detroit Lions to take what was considered the second best running back in the class. Of course, after Bijan Robinson was drafted 8th overall by the Falcons, it was considered a massive reach for the Detroit Lions to take another running back with the 12th overall pick months after signing David Montgomery to a 3-year, $18 million contract. Now, in his 3 years in college, Jahmyr Gibbs spent his first 2 years as a running back at Georgia Tech before transferring his final year of eligibility to the University of Alabama. Now, in his freshman season at Georgia Tech, Jahmyr Gibbs was really good. 460 yards on 89 carries, 4 touchdowns while averaging 5.2 yards per carry. He also added 24 receptions for 303 yards and 3 more touchdowns through the air to give him nearly 800 total scrimmage yards as a true freshman in a Power 5 conference. Now, his sophomore year, he followed it up with a massive campaign where he had over 143 carries for 746 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, as well as 36 receptions for 470 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. All in all, having 1,200 scrimmage yards on the year and 6 touchdowns. After that phenomenal campaign, Jahmyr Gibbs decided to transfer to Alabama, where he would face bigger and better competition, have the spotlight on him a lot more, and be the focal point of a national championship leading offense. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs in his junior season was, again, really, really good. 150 carries, 926 yards in the SEC, 7 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry, a career high at that point, as well as 44 receptions for 444 yards and 3 touchdowns. All in all, totaling for over 1,370 total yards and over 10 touchdowns on his junior season. After his fantastic junior year, with Bryce Young leaving the program and with a lot of Alabama talent leaving that year, Jahmyr Gibbs decided to declare for the NFL draft, where he was considered one of the best young running back prospects. Obviously, Bijan Robinson got all of the hype. Bijan Robinson got all of the excitement, but there was a steady group of people that said Jahmyr Gibbs was more explosive. He was potentially a better receiver. And even though he was a little bit smaller than Bijan Robinson and might not be able to handle every single carry as a bell cow, that Jahmyr Gibbs could potentially be a better, more quicker version of what the people wanted in a running back, right? Bijan Robinson was more that Ezekiel Elliott ground and pound bull, that bell cow running back, while Jahmyr Gibbs was more of the hybrid. He was more of the, modern day running back, the Christian McCaffrey and the, Le'Veon Bell, right? He was the receiving back. He was the slasher. He was the lightning. And a lot of people liked that better than Bijan Robinson, including the Detroit Lions. So in his rookie year, Jahmyr Gibbs was fantastic. Going through the rookie combine process, Jahmyr Gibbs had an incomplete RAS score, but his RAS score came out to an 8.06. It was harmed quite a bit by his poor size, I think measuring it at just 5'9", but his elite speed brought that back up as he ran a 4.36 40-yard dash as the fastest running back in the group. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs had a really, really good rookie season, and it's not hard to see why. He was explosive. He was a great receiver. He had great patience. He's an elite athlete, and he is, as I mentioned, the modern prototype for an NFL running back, right? Not very big, but elite speed, elite patience, great change of direction, has that second and that third gear, runs in the 4.3s, is a really good receiver, is super explosive. And while there were concerns about Jahmyr Gibbs getting 200 touches a season, there was no concern about Jahmyr Gibbs' ability to translate his game to the next level, and that game showed up immediately. As a rookie, Jahmyr Gibbs had 234 touches with the Detroit Lions. He had 1,261 yards and 11 touchdowns, while finishing fourth in Offensive Rookie of the Year votings, being voted to the Pro Bowl as a top 3 running back in the NFC, as well as finishing third among all running backs in the NFL with 5.2 yards per carry. The only 2 running backs ahead of him, Jaylen Warren, who had over 40 carries less, and Christian McCaffrey. So if you want to consider just starting running backs, it's just Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs was a phenomenal running back, and I think his rookie season does get overlooked a little bit because he didn't quite crack 1,000 yards, because he didn't quite have the 200-yard rushing game, but he was super consistent all season. He was really, really good, and even got better as the year went on. So let's compare him to another great young running back, the running back that was drafted ahead of him in 2023. How does he compare to Bijan Robinson? Well, Jahmyr Gibbs played in 2 less games than Bijan Robinson and had 32 less carries, but finished the year with just 31 less yards while averaging over half a yard more per carry. Now, you could say that it is because the Detroit Lions have such an elite offensive line, but the Falcons, I would argue, have a top 3 offensive line in the conference, and I would say probably have a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. So Bijan Robinson is not running behind a poor offensive line, and yet averaged 0.6 yards per carry less on every single touch of the football. Jahmyr Gibbs was more efficient. Jahmyr Gibbs was more explosive. And even while not being a focal point in the offense, Jahmyr Gibbs was a better running back than a player drafted ahead of him. So let's take a look at another great running back. Let's take a look at Christian McCaffrey, a player that was drafted in the top 10 as well in his respected draft class back in 2019. How does he compare to Christian McCaffrey as a rookie? Well, Jahmyr Gibbs played in less games, had over 500 more rushing yards, and 8 more total touchdowns. And while Christian McCaffrey was a better receiver as a rookie, Jahmyr Gibbs had more scrimmage yards and more total touchdowns. And overall, I would say was more impactful to the Detroit Lions as a rookie than Christian McCaffrey was to the Panthers as a rookie. So with that being the case, obviously comparing him to Christian McCaffrey now as he is the focal point of the 49ers offense isn't quite fair, right? He's going to have better statistics than Jahmyr Gibbs, but comparing Jahmyr Gibbs to arguably the best 2 running back prospects over the last couple of years and really in the last half decade, he stacks up better than a lot of people I think would give him credit for. And if you were to compare the rookie seasons of Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs, again, 3 of the best running back prospects over the last half a decade, I think there would be a pretty strong argument that Jahmyr Gibbs had the best rookie season of the bunch. Now, taking a look at Jahmyr Gibbs as just a statistic is obviously going to make him look pretty good, but considering the fact that he did all of this while splitting carries with David Montgomery, having 219 rushing attempts go to another running back on his football team, that makes what Jahmyr Gibbs did even more impressive. David Montgomery had 230 touches a season ago. He touched the football almost twice as much as any other player on the offense, not named Jahmyr Gibbs. So considering the fact that David Montgomery led the team in touches, and that is a player playing the same position as Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery deserved those carries, by the way, 1,000+ yards, 13 rushing touchdowns. He deserved his 200 carries, but considering the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs had over 230 touches taken away from him at the running back position as a rookie, and he still put up rookie numbers that were comparable to Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs is the next great NFL running back. I still think he will split carries with David Montgomery next year, but I think he will get a much larger workload. In the first 6 weeks of the NFL season, Jahmyr Gibbs averaged just 7 carries a game, and the only game that he had over 7 carries, and the only game that he had over 10 carries for that matter, was a game in which David Montgomery left with an injury, that being, of course, against the Atlanta Falcons. Every other game, Jahmyr Gibbs had less than 7 carries on the game. However, after week 6, from week 7 and on, the last 10 games of the NFL season while splitting carries with David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs had 11 plus carries in all but 2 of them. So in his final 10 games, he had 11 plus carries in 8 of them and had 11 carries once in the playoffs, while having 9 and 8 carries respectively in the divisional and wild card rounds. Jahmyr Gibbs was utilized more through the latter half of the season, even while splitting those carries. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a top 2 running back talent in the NFL. I think it is Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then a pretty massive gap between those two and the rest of the group. And while Nick Chubb is a great running back, and Breece Hall is a great running back, and Saquon Barkley is really good, and Bijan Robinson himself is a really, really strong young running back, I think Jahmyr Gibbs stands above them all as easily the second best player at his position. And while I will fully admit that there is a gap between Jahmyr Gibbs and Christian McCaffrey, I don't think that gap is nearly as wide as the gap is between Jahmyr Gibbs at 2 and whoever you have as your running back 3. Jahmyr Gibbs is everything that you want in a running back. He is explosive. He is dynamic. He is a receiver. He is patient behind the line of scrimmage, can change directions and change speed like nobody else in the NFL. And he is the future face of NFL running backs. Not to mention that going into 2024, Jahmyr Gibbs has improved as a wide receiver from all the reports that are coming out from camp. He is expected to get a larger workload, much like he did in the last 10 games of the season. So expect 10 to 12 carries a game with 3 to 5 targets. And he has all of the talent in the world to take over the NFL. So with all of that being said, that is my case and that is my narrative for Jahmyr Gibbs being arguably a top 2 running back in 2024. I think it will happen. I think by the end of next season, everybody will know 26 from the Detroit Lions, and they will know Jahmyr Gibbs as a top running back in the country. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know your opinions down in the comments below on Jahmyr Gibbs, whether you think he's going to have that breakout year, whether you think he's going to put up massive numbers, and whether or not you think he's actually going to get his recognition for being a top running back in the league. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say, but with all of that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. If you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please go down below and do so. Obviously, you like the Detroit Lions content if you're this far into the video. I produce daily Detroit Lions content talking about every player on the roster, every storyline, every breaking news, and every news report. So if you like the Detroit Lions content, please subscribe down below. It helps the channel out a ton, and we're shooting for 4,000 before the start of training camp. So if you could help us out, that would be phenomenal. But with that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.